Good morning. We made it to Tirana last night. And we were just so exhausted after getting out to here last night and then getting dinner. And then we just went home and pretty much went to sleep. But this morning we have a tour we're going to go on and then probably just wander around the city. So looking forward to experiencing Tirana.
So what we've noticed right away with Tirana is they're doing a lot of industrial work. There's a bunch of skyscrapers coming up, and then the Christmas market's starting, and they have good national museum that's getting worked on, so a lot of work's being done here. A free walking tour and it was amazingly done. We had a great time. Our guide was amazing, and just walking around this city, there's so much art here and architecture. I'm actually shocked. Like, I did not expect this place. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of traffic, there's a lot of people running around, but there's art everywhere. There's museums, there's awesome paintings, there's food places. Like, this is way better than I expected it to be. I'm really excited to spend the next 4 or 5 days here. Behind me is the Bej Mosque. It was built in the 18th century. What's interesting about it is that it's still here. So during the communist era in the 1960s, they destroyed a lot of churches, mosques, everything, but they left this one up because it was so beautiful. And what's unique about this mosque is that there's a lot of art depicting forests, trees, cities, things like that, which is not a normal thing to find in mosques. Happy Black Friday! So today it's raining, obviously. We got up, we went and had some for lunch, Albanian style, and now we're gonna get on a bus and we're going to go to the Bunk'Art Museum. There's 2 of them here. We're gonna go to the first one and then see if we can see some other things later.
We just took the blue line from the center of the city to the outskirts here to the Bunk'Art Museum, and thankfully our driver, when I asked him where we were going, there's a stop about midway on the line, and he was able to transfer us to the next bus that was continuing just a couple more stops. And everybody's really helpful. The guy who takes the money on the bus was just like, hey, come here, you know, here's your stop. And yeah, super nice service.
It's a little overwhelming because the bus is so incredibly full. You don't really know what's going on, and a guy in black's just taking your money.
Yeah, overall, just a really good service experience on the bus line, yeah. So we have made it to the bunker, and right behind me it shows an entire map of how big this facility is. They came up with this idea after visiting North Korea, and they are wanting to use this, or they were wanting to use this in the event of, if there was ever a military strike, that all of the political and military operations could continue without issues.
The very first room you go into is the decontamination room. So, sorry, The first room you come into is the decontamination room, which is because if there's chemical warfare, they want to make sure that everyone is clean. So these rooms are for the most important man, Mr. Haksa, who was the leader for a long time here, and he had the best rooms. One of Albania's main allies during the communist time was actually China, and so behind me are some artillery shells. I didn't know what this museum really was. I just knew that everyone said you had to go to it, but really it's a history museum of the 20th century of Albania. So it starts kind of right before World War I starts and just goes through every room is a different group that's occupying them and what they're doing, resistance fighters, politicians, academics. It's very interesting. It's a good way to learn the most recent Albanian history.
We just completed the tour of the Bunk'Art installation / museum here, and very interesting. There's quite a few things just on the general history of Albania, as Chrissy mentioned, as well as a few interesting stories. So one in particular, they described a plane crash of American military people / medical officers, and kind of what they had to go through. They were trying to get to Italy, ended up crash landing in Albania, and then their narrow escape to try to escape the Nazis when they were occupying Albania. So that was quite interesting to learn about.
Very cool story.
Other than that, yeah, definitely one of the spots you should check out when you reach Albania. We attempted to take the gondolier car up the mountainside here, but unfortunately it broke down just before we got here, so I guess we're going back to the city.
All right, today is kind of an errand day. We're gonna get Mike a haircut because he needs it. It's been a little long. Lots of places around here. Everyone has amazing haircuts here. We're gonna probably go to a museum and do some grocery shopping because everything's gonna be closed the next couple of days because it's their national holiday here. And we didn't realize it. So behind us is a market. Lots of typical, food market. And then what's kind of interesting is that to get here, you kind of go through this, what we would consider a seedy, thank you, babe, a seedy alley. But there's just shops and people everywhere. That's what's kind of nice about this place. You know, I feel really safe because there's people everywhere.
Just got done with my first haircut in 3 months since before we left the States. And I even did a beard trim and everything like that. I guess it's pretty standard. It comes with a haircut and everything here in Albania, which makes sense because a lot of men are walking around with beards, so they're not charging extra for that.
Here in Tirana, there really isn't a castle or a fortress that you can go to in downtown. It's definitely what was here is not anymore. There's a little bit of a tower you can see here, and what was the wall is now actually a really awesome place to spend an evening and go to a restaurant or go to a bar, things like that. But there's a lot of castles that you can go to that are within an hour, 2-hour bus ride or shuttle ride from Tirana. So if you got to get your castle fix, you can absolutely do that here, just not in downtown.
We have reached the House of Leaves Museum, and the reason why they call that is because of all the ivy that actually grows on this house. This was used as a surveillance headquarters for the communist regime, fascist, I guess, regime. Yeah, so then they turned it into a museum, and we're gonna go check it out. Room are the names of who they know was prosecuted by the communism regime during that era of Albania. We just got done with the House of Leaves, and it was interesting to find out that this started out as a clinic So from a location that started out by helping people became something turned against the very people they were initially trying to serve in this building. Quite interesting, again, just using fear as something that they wanted to use to make sure people were turning family members against family members, neighbors against neighbors. Even within the prison system, nobody was safe. They would hire people to even get you as a prisoner to try to make you say something against the government. Just overall, just a terrible time for Albania.
The one thing I found interesting is that when we were on our tour the other day, there's things here in Tirana that some people want to tear down and some people want to keep. The people that want to tear it down are people that have lived this life. And, I didn't really think much of it. I'm like, oh, it's your history, I understand it was bad, but it's part of a remembrance. But here, seeing the names on the wall, seeing the surveillance, listening to people's stories, it makes you understand why, they want it gone. We're walking over Tanner's Bridge. It used to be the way into the city for all the sheep and the cows and the goats. And since the 1930s, they rerouted the river, so it's not really needed anymore, but it's still a cute little bridge. Today we're doing a cooking class.
Good morning. Today we are just going to be walking around, kind of catching some last minute time here in Tirana before we head off to our next location. We wanted to give our final thoughts on Tirana, Albania. Overall, really enjoyed our time.
It's really interesting. As we were driving from Montenegro to Tirana, as we were driving through, you have all this beautiful diversity of farmland, different crops, different animals, a lot of diversity compared to Croatia and the other places that we've seen along the Baltics. And then you also see a difference in housing. You just have this huge mansion-looking resort thing, and then right next to it is just somebody's humble
a single
home,
floor family house,
with chickens and animals in the garden. So it was very interesting, the diversity here in Albania. It was cool. People selling things along the road. We saw a lot of that between their own produce or animals or tires or anything like that. So you can really get anything you want. Even here in Tirana, a lot of people selling, little things on the road, walnuts, anything like that. What really surprised us as we were walking through town is how not a lot of graffiti is here. From other places in Europe, there's graffiti everywhere, and yeah, they try and paint over it. It's nothing, but honestly, there's not a lot here. There's a ton of art in Tirana, and it's everywhere, and it's really awesome. And so, it's been cool to see how Tirana has made their city into an artwork, and the taggers are just leaving it alone. We had to pause there because someone wanted to walk right here, right next to us, and that brings me into there's a lot of smoking here, and there's no personal space, especially with the generation, 55 and older. We will have people waiting at the grocery store right next to us. You see how huge this path is behind us, and this woman is right along the edge, which is where we are. There's no personal space, which you get used to. And when we did our tour yesterday, the cooking class, even our guide was talking about how that generation was always waiting in line because of communism here in Albania. And yet now that it's over, they can't wait in line. They don't know what to do. So it was kind of an interesting, and it's set out of love. So that was interesting. So as soon as we got into Tirana itself, we felt so safe in a very busy area. There are so many people everywhere. I felt so incredibly safe here in Tirana compared to basically a lot of the cities we've been to. Not all of them, of course, but when it comes to like a major metropolitan area, we've felt very safe and very comfortable here.
Yep, yeah, and the locals have kind of reflected that with us, as far as stating themselves that, yeah, they've lived here many, many years and have never had any issues with pickpocketing or anything like that. So that's definitely a comfort coming here, and you could just feel that just in the vibe of the city. So
it's got a great vibe. The last thing I'll talk about is Albanian history. Like, I didn't realize how isolated Albania was from World War II until the 1990s, and how they had their own dictator with Haxhi, and they were isolated from everybody else, and they were suppressed. They didn't know they were, and it's been amazing to see how far this country has gone. And I think in the next 10 years, Tirana is going to be an amazing place to go to. It's an amazing place now. I've really enjoyed being here. The energy here is great. The people here are great. But over the next 10, 15 years,
really excited for them.
Yeah, this was great.